The galactic tension builds. The galaxy was restless. The fragile peace held by the Galactic Union, a coalition of dozens of advanced civilizations, teetered on the edge of collapse. For years, the alliance had been a beacon of hope, uniting species once divided by centuries of mistrust. But now, that hope was dimming. It started with whispers. Colonies on the outer rim of the galaxy had gone silent, one by one. Traders and travelers returned with tales of destruction, entire settlements wiped out, their technology stripped, their people vanished. The Union's leaders blamed pirates at first, but the sheer scale of the attacks spoke of something far more organized, far more dangerous. Captain Aaron Valor stood on the bridge of the Stellar Vanguard, Earth's most advanced starship, gazing at the swirling expanse of space through the viewport. Aaron was a legend among humans and respected, albeit cautiously, by many alien races. He had earned his reputation through bravery and tactical brilliance, leading Earth's forces in countless battles that had secured humanity's place in the Union. But even he felt the weight of the moment pressing on his shoulders. A message flashed on the console, breaking his thoughts. Priority communication from the Galactic Union Council, his AI companion, Nova, announced in her calm, mechanical voice. Aaron took a deep breath and tapped the console. The holographic image of Counselor Keldar, a reptilian Yaxori with gleaming green scales, appeared before him. "Captain Valor," Keldar said, his voice gravelly but urgent, "you are requested to attend a summit at the Eldrin capital. The Queen herself has insisted on your presence." Aaron frowned. The Eldrin were one of the most advanced species in the Union, known for their mysterious technology and their ability to manipulate energy fields. Queen Kalira, their ruler, was a figure shrouded in legend. She rarely interacted directly with outsiders, let alone humans. Her request was unprecedented. "What's the summit about?" Aaron asked, though he suspected the answer. "Unity," Keldar replied, his sharp teeth flashing in a grim smile. "Or what remains of it. The attacks on the colonies have left the Union divided. Many believe the humans are to blame. Others think the Eldrin are hiding something. The Queen claims she has information that could unite us, or destroy us." Aaron's jaw tightened. Humanity had fought hard for its place in the Union, but old prejudices lingered. The idea that humans, a relatively young species in the galactic community, could be behind the attacks was absurd. Still, fear made people irrational. If the Queen's information could prove humanity's innocence and uncover the real threat, he had no choice but to go. "When do I leave?" he asked. "Immediately," Keldar said. "A diplomatic escort will rendezvous with you at the edge of Eldrin space. And Captain, be careful. There are those who do not want this summit to succeed." The transmission ended, and the bridge fell silent. Aaron turned to his crew, a mix of humans and aliens who had followed him through countless battles. "You heard the counselor. Set a course for Eldrin space. Nova, prepare a report on everything we know about the Eldrin and their queen." "Yes, Captain," Nova replied. As the Stellar Vanguard surged into hyperspace, Aaron couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into a storm. The Eldrin capital, known as Lumora, was a marvel of engineering, a city suspended in the heart of a massive nebula. But it wasn't its beauty that concerned him. It was the secrets that lay within. Why had Queen Kalira called for him specifically? What did she know that could change the fate of the galaxy? 2 days later, the Stellar Vanguard emerged from hyperspace, greeted by a fleet of sleek Eldrin ships. Their silver hulls shimmered like liquid light, reflecting the nebula's colors. A voice crackled over the comms, melodic but firm. "Earth vessel, you are entering Eldrin territory. State your purpose." "This is Captain Aaron Valor of the Stellar Vanguard, responding to an invitation from Queen Kalira," Aaron replied. He kept his tone respectful, though the Eldrin's formality grated on him. Humanity had earned its place in the stars, but the Eldrin never let them forget they were newcomers. "Proceed," the voice replied. "Your ship will be escorted to Lumora. The journey through Eldrin space was surreal. The nebula's vibrant hues bathed the stellar vanguard in a kaleidoscope of light. Eren couldn't help but marvel at the Eldrin's mastery of energy. Their ships moved with an elegance that made even the finest human vessels seem clumsy. As Lumora came into view, the crew gasped. The city floated like a jewel, its spires stretching toward the stars. Energy fields crackled around it, creating an aura of shimmering light. It was a place of unimaginable beauty and hidden danger. When Eren stepped onto the landing platform, he was greeted by a delegation of Eldrin nobles, their flowing robes adorned with glowing patterns. At their center stood Queen Kalira. She was tall and graceful, her silver hair cascading like a waterfall of starlight. Her violet eyes met Eren's, and he felt a strange sense of recognition, though he was sure they had never met. "Welcome, Captain Valor," she said, her voice soft but commanding. "You have come at a critical time. There is much you must know about your people, your past, and the enemy we face." Eren's heart pounded. The answers he sought lay ahead, but so did questions he had never thought to ask. Whatever secrets the Queen held, they would change everything. Arrival at the Eldrin Palace. The journey to Lumora had been nothing short of awe-inspiring, but as the stellar vanguard approached the Eldrin capital, Eren couldn't shake the growing tension in his chest. The capital, suspended within the heart of a radiant nebula, shimmered with an ethereal beauty that defied logic. Massive crystalline spires stretched into the void, connected by glowing bridges of pure energy. Beneath them, rivers of light flowed like liquid stars, illuminating the city with a warm celestial glow. "Captain, we're receiving final docking coordinates," Nova's voice chimed, steady as ever. The AI, though devoid of emotion, had been a constant source of calm during countless missions. "Transmit our compliance," Eren replied, keeping his voice firm. He turned to his crew, their eyes glued to the view screens. Even the most seasoned officers couldn't hide their amazement at the sight before them. As the ship docked, Eren took a moment to steady himself. This wasn't just another mission. The Eldrin rarely invited outsiders to their capital, let alone humans. The fact that Queen Kalira had summoned him personally only added to the weight of the moment. When the airlock hissed open, Eren was greeted by an honor guard of Eldrin soldiers. Their armor, a sleek fusion of silver and light, seemed almost alive, shifting in response to their movements. At their center stood an Eldrin official, tall and imposing, with an air of authority that immediately demanded respect. "Captain Valor," the official said, inclining his head in a gesture that could be interpreted as a vow. "I am Minister Xylan, appointed to escort you to the Queen. Please, follow me." Eren nodded, stepping forward. Behind him, two of his officers followed, their expressions a mix of awe and apprehension. The Eldrin city was unlike anything they had ever seen. Every step along the glowing walkways revealed something new: hovering platforms carrying robed figures, gardens of luminous flora, and intricate murals that seemed to shift and tell stories of their own accord. The group moved in silence, save for the hum of energy fields surrounding the palace. As they approached, the grand entrance came into view. Twin crystalline gates stood open, guarded by towering statues that seemed to gaze down at them with unblinking eyes. The gates themselves pulsed with a gentle light, as if alive, welcoming them into the heart of Eldrin power. Inside, the palace was even more breathtaking. The walls were made of translucent crystal, allowing the nebula's light to cascade through in brilliant hues of gold and violet. Eldrin nobles, their robes adorned with shimmering patterns, turned to watch as the human delegation passed. Some whispered among themselves, their faces unreadable. Others simply stared, their gazes filled with curiosity, and perhaps a hint of suspicion. "Is it always this quiet?" one of Eren's officers murmured, barely loud enough to be heard. "It's a different kind of battlefield," Eren replied under his breath. "Stay alert." They were led through a series of grand halls until they reached the throne room. The chamber was vast, its ceiling disappearing into a swirling mist of starlight. At the center, Queen Kalira sat on a throne that seemed to grow organically from the floor, its crystalline structure glowing faintly. She rose as they entered, her presence commanding the room without a single word. Queen Kalira was unlike any leader Erin had ever encountered. Her silver hair flowed like liquid moonlight, and her eyes, a striking violet, seemed to pierce through him. She wore a gown that shifted colors with her movements, reflecting the nebulous hues. Despite her regal appearance, there was a calm, almost maternal warmth about her that made her seem both otherworldly and deeply human. "Captain Erin Valor," she said, her voice melodic yet firm. "Welcome to Limora." Erin stepped forward, bowing slightly as protocol demanded. "Your Majesty, it is an honor." Kalira's lips curved into a faint smile. "The honor is mine, Captain. I have awaited this meeting for many years." Her words caught him off guard. "Years? Forgive me, but I don't understand." "You will," she said, her gaze unwavering. "But first, you must understand why you are here. The galaxy stands on the brink of a war it cannot afford to lose. And you, Captain, are at the center of it." The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over them like a heavy mist. Erin felt the eyes of every noble in the room on him, but it was Kalira's gaze that held him in place. "What do you mean, at the center of it?" he asked carefully. Kalira gestured, and a holographic display materialized in the air between them. It showed a map of the galaxy, marked with red zones spreading like a stain. "These are the regions affected by the recent attacks," she explained. "The pattern is deliberate, precise. The enemy is not just attacking, they are positioning themselves for something far greater." "Who is the enemy?" Erin asked, his voice steady despite the growing tension. Kalira's expression darkened. "An ancient foe, thought to be extinct. The Krell." The name sent a chill through the room. The Krell were the stuff of nightmares, an aggressive hive-mind species that had nearly destroyed the galaxy centuries ago before vanishing without a trace. "But why involve me?" Erin pressed. "Why summon a human to this summit?" Kalira stepped closer, her eyes locking onto his. "Because, Captain, your bloodline holds a secret, a bond with the Eldrin forged in the fires of an ancient war, a bond that may be the galaxy's only hope." The revelation hit him like a thunderclap. His bloodline, a connection to the Eldrin. It sounded impossible. Yet, as Kalira's words sank in, he realized this was only the beginning of a much larger mystery. "Come," Kalira said, turning toward an inner chamber. "There is more you must see." And with that, Erin stepped deeper into the unknown, knowing that the answers he sought might change not just his life, but the fate of the galaxy itself. A forgotten connection. The air inside the private chamber was different, thicker, charged with an energy Erin couldn't identify. The room was circular, its walls made of an iridescent crystal that seemed to hum faintly. At the center stood a pedestal holding a strange artifact. It glowed softly, its surface etched with intricate patterns that pulsed like a heartbeat. Erin stepped forward cautiously, his eyes fixed on the object. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, yet there was something disturbingly familiar about it. Queen Kalira stood beside him, her expression unreadable. "This," she began, her voice low and steady, "is the Orb of Concordance. It has been a sacred relic of my people for thousands of years. But it is not just ours. It belongs to your people as well." Erin blinked, caught off guard by her words. "Our people? How is that possible? Humanity has no record of this orb." Kalira's violet eyes softened, as if she understood the storm of questions brewing in his mind. "Your history is incomplete, Captain. There is a part of your past that has been forgotten, buried by time and conflict." She gestured toward the orb. "During the War of Sundering, millennia ago, the Krell sought to dominate the galaxy, spreading their hive across countless worlds. My ancestors led the resistance, but even with our technology and unity, we were losing. Then your kind arrived. Erin frowned. Humanity. That can't be right. Humans only recently joined the galactic stage. Kalira nodded. That is what most believe. But the truth is more complex. A small group of humans, refugees from a distant star system, found their way to our world. They were not like the humans of today, less advanced, but fiercely resilient. They fought alongside us, not with technology, but with courage and ingenuity. She placed her hand on the orb, and the patterns on its surface brightened. A holographic projection emerged, displaying a battle long past. Erin watched as figures, both human and Eldrin, fought side by side against towering insectoid creatures. The Krail were monstrous, their chitinous bodies gleaming under the harsh light of alien suns. But what struck Erin most was the sight of humans wielding makeshift weapons, standing defiantly against overwhelming odds. One of your ancestors, Kalira continued, was a leader among them. He formed a pact with my people, a bond of trust that allowed us to turn the tide of the war. Together, we defeated the Kraul and sealed away their hive. The Orb of Concordance was created to symbolize our alliance, and it has remained here ever since. Erin struggled to process the revelation. The idea that humanity had played such a pivotal role in galactic history was almost too much to believe. If this is true, he said slowly, why doesn't Earth know about it? Why is this the first I'm hearing of it? Kalira sighed, her gaze dropping to the orb. The answer lies in the aftermath of the war. Your ancestors chose to leave, to return to the stars and find a new home. Over time, their descendants lost touch with their origins, and the memory of what they achieved faded into legend. Only the Eldrin remember the truth. She stepped closer to Erin, her voice taking on a note of urgency. But the bond remains, Captain. It is why the Orb responds to you. Erin looked at the glowing artifact, his heart pounding. Responds to me? What do you mean? Kalira extended her hand toward him. Touch it. See for yourself. He hesitated, glancing back at his officers. They were watching intently, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and unease. Taking a deep breath, Erin reached out and placed his hand on the orb's surface. The effect was immediate. A surge of energy shot through him, and his vision blurred. Suddenly, he was no longer in the chamber but standing in the middle of a battlefield. The sounds of clashing weapons and alien roars filled his ears. He saw a man who looked eerily similar to himself, leading a charge against the Krull. The man's voice echoed in his mind. We fight not for survival, but for hope. The vision shifted, and Erin saw the Eldrin homeworld as it had been centuries ago, vibrant and full of life. He saw humans and Eldrin working together to build defenses, share knowledge, and forge a future free from fear. When the vision ended, Erin staggered back, his heart racing. Kalira steadied him, her touch gentle but firm. Do you see now? She asked. Your bloodline carries their spirit. The same courage, the same determination. That is why you were chosen. Erin shook his head, trying to make sense of it all. Chosen for what? What does this mean for me, for humanity? Kalira's expression grew solemn. The Krail have returned, Captain, and they remember the ones who defeated them. The bond between our people is the key to stopping them again. But to awaken the orb's true power, we must reforge the alliance. Her word hung in the air like a challenge. Erin knew this was no coincidence. Everything he had faced, every battle, every sacrifice, had led him to this moment. The galaxy was once again on the brink, and humanity's role in its fate was undeniable. I don't know if I'm ready for this, he admitted. Kalira placed a hand on his shoulder, her gaze steady. None of us ever are. But the galaxy needs you, Erin Valor. Together, we can stop the Krull. Together, we can make history. Erin took a deep breath, the weight of responsibility settling on him like a heavy cloak. Then let's make it count. With those words, he stepped into a destiny written long before he was born. The enemy revealed. The orb's glow dimmed, leaving the chamber in a tense silence. Erin's hand still tingled from the energy it had pulsed into him. His mind raced with the vision he had witnessed. Humans and Eldrin standing together, fighting an enemy that seemed unstoppable. The weight of it all pressed heavily on him, but there was no time to dwell. Queen Kalira's solemn expression told him the revelations weren't over. "Captain Veller," Kalira said, breaking the silence, "what you have just seen is but a fragment of the truth. Now, it is time you learn what lies ahead." She gestured to the orb, which emitted a thin beam of light that expanded into a detailed holographic map of the galaxy. Red zones spread like bloodstains across the outer rim, converging toward the Union's core territories. Erin recognized the pattern immediately. It was an encirclement. "These regions," Kalira began, "are where the Krell have been reawakening. What your ancestors defeated centuries ago was not the entirety of their hive. They left behind sleeper nests, colonies dormant, waiting for the right moment to rise again." Erin stared at the map, his stomach churning. How do we know this isn't just speculation? The Krell have been a ghost story for centuries. Even the Union considers them a myth. Kalira's violet eyes narrowed. "Because we have seen them." With a flick of her hand, the map dissolved, replaced by a new hologram. This one showed grainy footage from an Eldrin reconnaissance drone. The scene was chaotic, an outpost on a barren planet, its defenses crumbling under an onslaught of alien creatures. The Krell were monstrous, their chidnous bodies glinting under harsh sunlight. They moved with terrifying coordination, their clawed limbs tearing through walls as if they were paper. Erin's jaw tightened. These were no mere raiders or pirates. The Krell were an army, a single terrifying organism bent on destruction. "Why hasn't the Union been told about this?" Erin demanded, his voice sharp. "If you've known they're back, why keep it a secret?" Kalira's expression softened, though her tone remained firm. "Because fear is a dangerous weapon. The Union is already fractured. Some would use this information to incite war among the member species, blaming one another instead of focusing on the true enemy. Others would panic, retreating into isolation, and leaving the galaxy even more vulnerable." She stepped closer, her gaze locking with his. "But the real reason, Captain, is that the Krell are not acting alone." Erin blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" Kalira waved her hand again, and the hologram shifted to show something even more shocking. A Union fleet, its ships bearing the distinct markings of multiple species. But they weren't defending against the Krell. They were escorting them. The creatures moved alongside the ships, protected as they advanced on another helpless colony. Erin's blood ran cold. "Traitors." "Not just traitors," Kalira said. "Sympathizers. The Krell's hive mind is more than just a biological network. It's a psychological weapon. They don't conquer through brute force alone. They assimilate. They infiltrate. And now, it seems, they have found allies within the Union itself." Erin struggled to process the magnitude of what he was seeing. The Union wasn't just fighting an external enemy, it was being sabotaged from within. "How far does this go?" he asked, his voice low. "We don't know," Kalira admitted. "But the attacks on the outer colonies are only the beginning. The Krell are gathering strength, and when they strike the core territories, it will be catastrophic." Erin clenched his fists. "Then we need to act now. Warn the Union. Mobilize our forces." Kalira shook her head. "It's not that simple. The Union Council is paralyzed by infighting. They'll demand proof we don't yet have. And even if they believed us, they are unprepared for what's coming." "Then what's your plan?" Erin asked, his frustration mounting. Kalira turned to the orb, placing her hands on its surface. The glowing patterns shifted, and a new image emerged. A colossal Eldrin starship, its design unlike anything Erin had ever seen. Its sleek, angular form bristled with weaponry, and energy fields crackled along its hull. "This," Kalira said, "is the Aegis Eternal, an ancient vessel created during the War of Sundering. It was designed specifically to counter the Krill's hive mind. Its energy core can disrupt their connections, severing their control over individual units, but it has not flown in centuries." "Why not?" Erin asked, already sensing the answer. "The Aegis requires a unique energy source to function," Kalira explained. "The same energy that powers the Orb of Concordance, and only someone with the right connection, someone from your bloodline, can unlock its full potential." The weight of her words hit Erin like a tidal wave. "You're saying I'm the key?" Kalira nodded. "You are the heir to your ancestors' legacy, Captain. The bond they forged with my people lives within you. If we are to have any chance of stopping the Krill, you must take command of the Aegis Eternal and lead the fight." Erin's mind raced. He had faced impossible odds before, but this was different. The fate of the galaxy wasn't just resting on his shoulders. It was tied to his very identity. "What if I fail?" he asked quietly. Kalira's expression softened, and for the first time, he saw a hint of vulnerability in her eyes. "Failure is not an option, Captain, but you will not face this alone. My people will stand with you, just as we did with your ancestors. Together, we can end this threat before it consumes us all." Erin took a deep breath, the enormity of the task settling over him. He didn't have all the answers, but one thing was clear. The Krail had to be stopped, no matter the cost. "I'm in," he said finally, "but we need to move fast. The longer we wait, the stronger they'll get." Kalira smiled, a glimmer of hope lighting her face. "Then let us prepare, Captain. The galaxy's survival depends on it." As Erin left the chamber, he couldn't help but glance back at the orb. It no longer felt like an ancient relic. It felt like a promise that humanity and the Eldrin would stand united once more, just as they had in the past. And this time, they would finish what they started. Betrayal in the Union. The briefing chamber aboard the Aegis Eternal buzzed with tension as Erin and Queen Kalira finalized their plans. The ancient vessel, now awakened by the energy of the Orb of Concordance, hummed with a power that seemed almost alive. Eldrin engineers and human officers worked side by side, preparing for what would undoubtedly be the most critical mission of their lives: a preemptive strike on the Krall hive to disrupt their growing invasion. Erin stood at the center of the room, surrounded by holographic projections of the galaxy. The Krall's advance had been meticulously mapped, their territories spreading like cracks across a fragile pane of glass. The plan was ambitious, perhaps even reckless, but it was their best chance to stop the enemy before they became unstoppable. "Captain Valor," Kalira said, her tone calm but urgent, "if we succeed in destroying this hive cluster, the Krall's hive mind will be temporarily weakened. It will give the Union time to mobilize and prepare for the larger war to come." Erin nodded, his expression grim. "Then we can't afford any mistakes. Everyone needs to be ready for." An alarm blared, cutting him off mid-sentence. The holographic map flickered, replaced by a warning display. Nova's voice echoed through the chamber, sharp and uncharacteristically urgent. "Captain, we've detected an unauthorized breach in the ship's central data core. Someone is trying to access classified mission files." Kalira's eyes narrowed. A spy. Erin wasted no time. "Lock down the core and seal all exits. Nobody leaves this ship without my permission." He tapped his communicator, his voice hard. "Security teams, converge on the data core. Apprehend the intruder, alive, if possible." Erin led the charge, his boots echoing down the sleek corridors of the Aegis Eternal. The ship's energy fields pulsed with a steady rhythm, as if the vessel itself was aware of the unfolding betrayal. His mind raced as he considered the possibilities. Who would risk sabotaging their mission? And, more importantly, why? When they reached the data core, the door was already ajar, a faint light spilling into the hallway. Erin raised his weapon, signaling for his team to stay back. He stepped inside cautiously, scanning the room. Rows of crystalline terminals glowed softly, their data streams flowing like rivers of light. At the center, a figure stood hunched over one of the consoles, frantically typing. "Stop right there," Erin barked, his voice cutting through the silence. The figure froze, then turned slowly. Erin's breath caught in his throat. It was Commander Rylan, one of his most trusted officers, a human, someone he had fought alongside for years. "Rylan." Erin lowered his weapon slightly, confusion and anger warring within him. "What the hell are you doing?" Rylan straightened, his face calm but his eyes betraying a hint of regret. "I'm sorry, Captain. I didn't want it to come to this." "Come to what?" Erin demanded. "You're betraying your crew, your people. For what?" "For survival," Rylan said, his voice steady. "You don't understand what we're up against. The Krail, they're unstoppable. Fighting them is suicide. But allying with them, serving them, that's the only way to ensure humanity's future." Erin's grip on his weapon tightened. "You've been working with them this whole time." Rylan nodded. "The Krull don't destroy indiscriminately. They assimilate, yes, but they also reward loyalty. They've promised humanity a place in their new order, if we cooperate. I've been feeding them intelligence for months, keeping them informed about Union plans." Kalira stepped into the room, her presence commanding. "You've doomed countless lives with your treachery," she said, her voice icy. "The Krail cannot be bargained with. They will consume humanity as easily as they consume any other species." Rylan turned to her, his expression defiant. "And what would you know, Eldrin? Your people live in their shining cities, untouched by the struggles of the rest of the galaxy. You don't understand what it's like to be human, to face extinction at every turn." Erin's voice was a low growl. "You think this is survival? Selling out your own kind to a hive of parasites? You've lost your way, Rylan." Raylan's hand darted to his sidearm, but before he could draw, Erin fired. The energy blast hit Rylan in the shoulder, sending him sprawling to the floor. Security officers rushed in, restraining him before he could make another move. "Take him to the brig," Erin ordered, his voice cold. "We'll deal with him later." Back in the command chamber, the mood was somber. The revelation of Raylan's betrayal had shaken the crew, but it also steeled their resolve. The Krail were not just an external threat. They had already infiltrated the Union, sowing division and fear from within. Kalira stood beside Erin, her gaze fixed on the holographic map. "This is only the beginning," she said quietly. "For every traitor we uncover, there may be dozens more. The Krail's influence runs deep." Erin nodded, his jaw set. "Then we root them out. We expose every collaborator, every sympathizer, and we show the galaxy that the Krail can be beaten." Kalira turned to him, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "And you believe the Union can be united in time?" Erin's expression softened, but his resolve was unshaken. "If there's one thing humanity has taught the galaxy, it's that we don't give up. Not ever." As the Aegis Eternal prepared for its next move, Erin knew the fight ahead would test them all. But for the first time, he felt a spark of confidence. The Krail might have the power to manipulate and destroy, but they hadn't counted on one thing: the indomitable will of a united galaxy, and Erin was ready to lead the charge. Sacrifices and unity. The Aegis Eternal drifted silently in the void, its sleek, ancient hull pulsing with latent energy. The ship was a marvel of Eldrin engineering, a symbol of unity forged in the fires of an ancient war. Now it was a warship ready to lead a new fight against the Krull. But inside its glowing halls, the air was heavy with tension. Erin stood on the bridge, gazing out at the stars. Behind him, Queen Kalira and a coalition of Union representatives had gathered around the central holographic table, where a tactical map of the galaxy floated above the surface. The faces around the table represented a fragile alliance, Species that had bickered and distrusted each other for centuries, now forced to work together against an existential threat. The map displayed the coral hive cluster that Erin and Kalira had targeted. It was a sprawling network of organic structures embedded in an asteroid field at the edge of the galaxy. The cluster wasn't just a nest, it was a staging ground for the Krail's invasion. Destroying it would cripple their ability to launch further attacks. "This isn't just about winning a battle," Erin began, his voice steady but firm. "This is about showing the galaxy that the Krail can be stopped. If we don't strike now, they'll only grow stronger." A grizzled Lithari general, his fur streaked with silver, grunted in skepticism. "You speak as if it's that simple, human. The Krail are unlike any enemy we faced. Their hive mind allows them to adapt in real time. One mistake, and they'll overwhelm us." Kalira stepped forward, her presence commanding. "That is why we must rely on more than brute force. The Aegis Eternal was designed to counter the hive mind. Its core disrupts their connections, turning their greatest strength into a weakness. But the ship alone will not be enough. We need every ship, every soldier, and every ounce of courage the Union can muster." There was a moment of silence as the room absorbed her words. Then, a young human officer spoke up, her voice trembling but determined. "We've all lost people to the Krail. Families, friends, entire worlds. If we don't fight now, there won't be anything left to save." The words hung in the air, resonating with everyone in the room. Slowly, the Lithari general nodded. "Very well. The Lithari fleet will stand with you. For the galaxy." One by one, the representatives voiced their support. The Union was far from whole, but for the first time in years, there was a glimmer of unity. The battle plan was set. The coalition fleet would strike in waves, using the Aegis Eternal as the spearhead. Its energy core would create a disruption field, neutralizing the Krail's hive mind in the immediate area. Once the field was active, the fleet would launch an all-out assault on the hive cluster, targeting its central nexus. As the crew prepared for battle, Erin found himself in the engine room, where Eldrin engineers were making final adjustments to the ship's core. The Orb of Concordance sat in a containment chamber, its glowing patterns pulsing in rhythm with the ship. It was a sight both beautiful and unsettling, a reminder of the power he had been entrusted with. Kalira joined him, her expression thoughtful. "You carry a heavy burden, Captain." Erin glanced at her, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I've carried worse." Her gaze softened. "Perhaps, but this is not just a battle for survival. It's a battle for hope. The galaxy will look to you as a symbol of what we can achieve when we stand together." "I didn't ask to be a symbol," Erin said, his voice quiet. "I just want to do what's right." "And that," Kalira said, placing a hand on his shoulder, "is why you were chosen." When the fleet arrived at the asteroid field, the Krail were waiting. Swarms of bioships erupted from the hive cluster, their organic forms writhing as they moved. The Krail fleet was vast, a living tide that seemed to consume the light of the stars. Erin stood on the bridge of the Aegis Eternal, his crew tense but focused. "All ships, maintain formation," he ordered. "We can't afford to lose cohesion." The Union fleet surged forward, their weapons blazing. Energy beams and missile barrages lit up the void, slamming into the Krail ships. But for every enemy destroyed, more seemed to take its place. "Activate the disruption field," Erin commanded. Kalira nodded, her hands moving over the controls. The Aegis Eternal's core flared to life, releasing a wave of energy that rippled through the battlefield. The effect was immediate. The Krail ships faltered, their movements becoming erratic. For the first time, they seemed vulnerable. "Now," Erin shouted, "focus fire on the central nexus." The fleet concentrated their attacks, pounding the hive cluster with everything they had. Explosions rippled across the asteroid field as the Krail's defenses crumbled. But the victory was far from assured. "Captain," Nova's voice cut in, "the core's energy levels are dropping." if the field collapses. I know, Aaron said, his mind racing. Divert all auxiliary power to the core. We need to hold it together. The ship shuddered under enemy fire, alarms blaring as damage reports flooded in. Aaron gripped the console, his knuckles white. We're not giving up. Not now. Kalira glanced at him, her expression fierce. You're risking everything. That's what it takes to win, Aaron replied. As the battle raged on, the Aegis Eternal unleashed one final devastating pulse from its core. The disruption field surged, tearing through the Krill's forces and leaving their hive cluster exposed. The Union fleet didn't hesitate, launching a coordinated strike that obliterated the central nexus in a blinding explosion. When the dust settled, the battlefield was silent. The Krail were defeated, their hive cluster reduced to rubble. But the cost had been high. Ships drifted, damaged, or destroyed, and the fleet's losses weighed heavily on everyone. Aaron stood on the bridge, his body weary but his spirit unbroken. The Union had come together in the face of an unimaginable threat, and they had prevailed. Kalira approached him, a rare smile gracing her lips. You did it, Captain. The galaxy has hope again. Aaron nodded, though his expression was somber. This was just the first battle. The war's far from over. And yet, Kalira said, you've shown us what we can achieve when we stand as one. That is a victory in itself. As the Aegis Eternal turned toward home, Aaron couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, the galaxy had a chance to stand united against the darkness, and he would do whatever it took to see it through. The hero's revelation. The battle had been won, but the silence that followed was deafening. The Aegis Eternal drifted among the debris of the shattered Krail hive cluster, its once pristine hull scarred and battered. The Union fleet, though victorious, bore the heavy toll of their efforts. Wreckage floated in the void, the remnants of brave ships and brave souls who had given everything for a chance at survival. Aaron Valor stood on the observation deck, his reflection barely visible against the star-speckled expanse beyond. The weight of command pressed heavily on him. The Krail nexus had been destroyed, but the war was far from over. They had won a battle, not the war, and the cost of even this single victory gnawed at him. Captain, Nova's voice broke the silence. The ship's AI had been his constant companion throughout the campaign, but now, even her mechanical tones carried a hint of solemnity. Queen Kalira has requested your presence in the council chamber. She says it is urgent. Aaron sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Of course it is. I'll be there shortly. He cast one last glance at the field of stars before turning away. There was no time to linger on the past. The future demanded his attention. The council chamber was alive with tension. Representatives of the Union's allied species filled the room, their faces a mix of relief, exhaustion, and unease. At the center stood Queen Kalira, her presence as commanding as ever. The orb of concordance hovered above the table, its glow dim but steady. Captain Valor, Kalira greeted him as he entered. We owe you a great debt. Without your leadership, this victory would not have been possible. Aaron inclined his head. This was a team effort. Everyone here played their part. Kalira smiled faintly. Humility becomes you, Captain, but we must now face a new reality. She gestured toward the orb, which projected a holographic display of the galaxy. The Krail's influence had receded in the immediate area, but the map still showed red zones across other sectors. The hive cluster they had destroyed was just one of many. This is what remains of the Krail, Kalira said. They are wounded but far from defeated. Worse, we have confirmed that their hive mind is adapting. The loss of the Nexus will not cripple them for long. A ripple of unease passed through the room. One of the representatives, a feathered Avari diplomat, spoke up. Then what hope do we have? If they can recover from this, what chance does the Union have against the full strength of their hive? Kalira turned to Aaron, her gaze steady. The hope lies in him. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Eren. He straightened, uneasy under the weight of their collective attention. "What do you mean?" he asked. Kalira stepped closer, her voice lowering. "The Orb of Concordance has chosen you, Captain. It has awakened a bond that has lain dormant for centuries, a bond between humanity and the Eldrin. That bond is the key to unlocking the full potential of the Aegis Eternal and our combined forces." Eren frowned. "You're saying the orb isn't fully activated?" Kalira nodded. "Not yet. Its power can only be fully realized by someone who embodies the unity it represents, someone who can bridge the gap between our people, as your ancestors once did." Eren took a step back, the implications of her words sinking in. "You think I'm that person?" "I don't think, Captain," Kalira said firmly. "I know." Later, in the solitude of his quarters, Eren stared at the orb resting on a pedestal. Its glow seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat, as if it were alive. The weight of Kalira's words lingered in his mind. The galaxy was looking to him for answers, for hope. But he was just one man. How could he possibly live up to the expectations placed upon him? A soft chime broke his thoughts. Nova's voice filled the room. "Captain, I've analyzed the orb's energy patterns. It's responding to your unique biological and psychological profile. The Queen's assessment appears accurate." "Great," Eren muttered, running a hand through his hair. No pressure. He approached the orb, hesitating before placing his hand on its surface. The moment his skin made contact, a surge of energy coursed through him, and his vision blurred. Images flooded his mind. Visions of humanity's past and future intertwined with the Eldrin's legacy. He saw his ancestors standing shoulder to shoulder with Kalira's people, forging a bond that had endured across millennia. But he also saw the Krull. Their hive stretched across countless worlds, their hunger insatiable. They were more than a threat. They were a plague, one that would consume everything unless stopped. When the vision ended, Eren staggered back, his heart pounding. He understood now. The orb wasn't just a relic. It was a promise that humanity and the Eldrin could stand united against even the darkest of enemies. The next day, Eren stood before the Union Council, his voice steady as he addressed the assembled leaders. "The Krail are relentless, but they are not invincible," he said. "We've proven that unity can overcome even the greatest threats. But this is only the beginning. If we want to win this war, we need to build on what we've started here. We need to trust each other, fight for each other, because that's the only way we survive." Kalira stepped forward, her presence lending weight to his words. "Captain Valor speaks the truth. The galaxy's greatest strength lies in its diversity. Together, we can achieve what no single species can. The Krail are a force of destruction, but we are a force of creation. Let us show them what that means." The room erupted in applause, the sound echoing through the chamber. For the first time in years, there was a sense of hope, a belief that the galaxy could stand united against the darkness. As the fleet prepared for the next stage of the war, Eren found himself back on the observation deck, gazing at the stars. He knew the road ahead would be long and perilous, but he also knew he wasn't alone. The Union was behind him, and the bond between humanity and the Eldrin was stronger than ever. For the first time, he allowed himself to believe that victory was possible. The Krail might have been ancient, powerful, and relentless, but they had underestimated one thing: the indomitable spirit of a united galaxy. And Eren Valor was ready to lead it to victory.